Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a polymer clay project that you have to try at least once when working with polymer clay. And that technique is the folded fabric technique, where you will take the polymer clay and you'll actually scruffle it up into a fabric-like effect. And I can't show you it really well over here because this is just plain polymer clay and it will stick together, but this gives you a very vague effect of what it's going to look like. It's going to look like folded fabric. So what you're going to need to do that is you're going to want a piece of polymer clay that is rolled out as thin as you can possibly get it, and I'm going to be working with Pearl White Primo polymer clay today. And this was rolled out on the thinnest setting. You're then going to take a piece of paper and you're going to burnish that, and the biggest reason for that is because when you roll things through a pasta machine, oftentimes you'll end up with slight ripples and creases, and that creates kind of a memory in the clay so that when you go to fold it later it will follow those creases, like I've got some over there. And by burnishing it with the paper you're going to be removing those creases and therefore removing the want for the clay to go in that direction when you're working with it later. Now I am going to just trim this up because I don't need all of this clay, so you just want to trim up those edges, and you want to work with more clay than what you think you're going to need because the fold effect does end up using quite a bit of clay in a small area, so work with more than what you would need. Alright, I'm just going to pick that up off the tile, and I'm working on a glass ceramic on a glass tile, and I'm just going to place it on a piece of paper. That way when I apply powder to it, it'll be easier to clean up. And I've got a selection of powders here. I've got a dark blue, a kind of mid-range blue, peacock green, and then two color shift powders, one that shifts to green in certain light and one that shifts to blue. And that I'm going to paint or dust onto my clay. And all you're going to do is take a brush and just dab that around at random. And you want to work with a fair amount of powder because I really want this to be just really shiny. I'm kind of going with a sea foam effect, and you want to work with as much powder as you can. It will give you the best result and I think you're really going to like it. Of course you can do this technique without the powder. If you want to just use a plain old sheet of clay you can. What you're going to want to do though is you're going to want to, instead of applying powder, you'll want to add some cornstarch, because what the powder does is it creates a non-stick effect which makes creating the fabric effect later much easier. So if you do use just plain clay and don't colour it with powder, you need to put a generous dusting of cornstarch over the top just to give it that non-stick effect. And I'm just stippling this into place, and you can see that's given a really nice lot of colour. And then I'm going to take that colour shift and I'm just going to tap that around, and I'm probably going to add more of that later when I go to add the varnish, but I do want some of it mixed in because that will create a fun effect. Right, and there's a lot of powder on here, but we'll work with that. I'm going to just move these out of the way and keep the blue colour shift powder. That one we're going to use in just a little bit to create pearls. And then I'm just bringing over a piece of paper, and this you're going to use to burnish that powder into the clay. This will both embed it into the clay, meaning that it will be more sturdy once it's baked, but it also means that you can get more powder onto the surface than you would if you were just brushing with a brush, because you're really working it into that clay. Okay, and it does leave a little bit, but not too much. Then what I do like to do is I will then go with my finger and I will just brush over the surface just to loosen up mounds of powder because there will be some loose powder, and also to just blend the colours together a little more. Clean your finger because you don't want that powder carrying over, and then let me show you how that catches the light. And that is before we've even started moving it around. Then remove it from that piece of paper. And I'll put that to the side, and I'm going to bring over another piece, a clean one, and that's what we're going to work with in here. You can actually see better here how it's shifting in colour when you actually have it at different angles, so that's going to be quite fun. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to very gently scruff it up, not too much. Don't squeeze it. You just want to kind of create some fold memory for the clay so that when you go to fold it later, it's got something to work with. So just very carefully do that. Okay, and that should help. Then you're going to take that and you're going to start manipulating that into these patterns, and you can actually pick it up and kind of work it that way. And then I'm going to flip it over because then I can work with the non-stick side facing onto the paper, and that will actually make it easier to get those folds. And this takes a while, it's not a very quick effect, so have a little bit of patience when doing it, but keep working it and squishing it into folds, flipping it over, and you can see there how that looks. And there you can see how that's starting to work. And I'm going to continue doing that, fussing with it, moving it around and getting it into these tight little folds until I'm happy. And I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going to bring over a piece of white or pearl white that's been rolled out on the middle setting of my pasta machine, and this is what the back of our piece is going to be. So just give it a very quick burnish down onto a piece of paper to give it a nice smooth back, and then take this and keep it on the piece of paper. And a little trick so that it doesn't change in shape too much is to just gently shimmy that down like so. There we go. Then you're going to take that, and you can move it around a little more if you want, but you want to just go and gently press it onto the surface, not too much, because otherwise you'll flatten out your folds. And I'm going to go in, and there might be some cracks, so I will dust over those edges just so that the pearl white doesn't show up through those. But there shouldn't be too many, and you can also use your brush to kind of get in and press it into places. Okay, then grab your cutter of choice. And I'm going to use this one. I'm just going to choose a nice spot where I capture a lot of the different folds. I think that works. And press down, and that will cut the clay, and it will also kind of bind the clay on the edges, and I'm just tapping that spot to get that down. Okay, and then lift up, remove that, and this should come out pretty easily. There we go. Okay, then just go around the edges and smooth. That's probably going to get sanded. You could also dust that off if you want to, but there's the base piece, and I am going to just dust around the edges just to kind of hide that really stark pearl white. Okay, then I'm going to put that to the side, that will get baked in a little bit. This part over here, you could cut out more pieces if you wanted. What I prefer to do is actually just take that off, because then the pearl white can be used again. It's got a little bit of powder on it, but it's pretty much gonna just come back to pearl white. And this you can mix up, and that will mix the powders in and give you a light blue pearl colour. Then we're going to move on to creating our pearls. And for that, you're going to want a piece of pearl white. I've just got this run out on the same setting as my backing. It doesn't really matter, you just want a piece, and I'm going to stick that down onto a tile. You can use a piece of paper, and this is because we're going to be using micro circle cutters, and if it's stuck down to a surface, then they won't stick in the cutters. Okay, that's ready to go. Then you also want, let me just find it, here we go. I've already done some, but what you want is just a container that holds a little bit of the colour shift powder, the blue one in this case. It could also contain other colours of powders, and what we would do is we're going to cut out pieces, pop it in the container, and then you can shake it around and it will coat them in the powder, and it just makes the process much easier. So I'm going to grab some micro circles. I'm just going to cut out a couple, and I've got 3 different sizes, and these I'm going to use to decorate our piece once it's baked. And you're going to want quite a few of those. And I've just got a couple here. I've already made a whole bunch. And just lift that up at an angle. Then you're going to grab those, roll them in your fingers just to round out the edges. Drop them in there, and then shake it around to coat it. And then repeat that process with as many little pearls as you want. And you could use glass pearls or any kind of pearls that you want to. You don't have to make them from polymer clay, because I'm going to be sticking them down using resin later, so long as the material that you choose to use will stick with resin, you could swap out these clay ones for that. But then what you're going to do is you're going to grab those, and let me bring over a piece of paper from before. I'm just going to tip those out onto here very carefully. Okay, and I have a couple there that are sticking, and that's fine. I'll just bring over a pair of tweezers and just coax them out. There we go. And then that will just go back onto the lid, and then I'm just going to roll those around to kind of separate them out. And this also will just smooth down the powder a little bit. And they won't stick to each other because they're covered in powder. Then let me just sweep them all onto the paper, and then those are going to go into the oven with this for about 40 minutes at Burroughs recommended temperature. And then once they're baked, we're going to apply a coat of resin to this and stick these down using the resin. And here is how it looks once it's out of the oven, and I'm quite happy with how that turned out. What I am going to do is I'm just going to go over it with a brush very quickly, because there is some powder that is just hanging out on the surface, and I don't really want that there when I place the resin on, because it can cloud the resin up. So just give it a quick brush to get rid of that extra powder. There we go, and it shouldn't take much, and I hope that you can see there the beautiful colour shift on that. Okay, and so now let me just flip that over and we can apply our resin. Right, and for that you're going to need some UV resin, and I'm going to mainly focus on the tighter areas of the pattern, like for instance this crease over here and this one over here, and that's where I'm going to be slotting the pearls. And let me just bring that over so you can see I have the pearls just sitting over here, so they're just right to the side here. Okay, and from there you will apply your resin to the crease, and don't apply too much. This is just going to be enough to get those pools sticking to the surface, and then just drag that resin out. We're going to be doing a second layer, and that's going to cover the rest of the piece, so you just want to be applying that resin to the small areas. Then you're going to pick up your pearl and just drop it in. And I kind of like to drop them in at random, especially if it's a larger crevice like this, where it will just kind of sink down and apply at random. And you might need to just coax it in. A lot of the time it can actually fit. There we go. And you can do that for as many or as little of these crevices as you want. It's completely up to you how much you do or do not apply. So just do that across the entire piece. And there we go. And don't be afraid to apply more if you want, or less. And then what you're going to do now is you're going to pop this under the UV light for about 30 seconds will do. You just want to set that resin enough that it's not going to move if you were to apply more resin to the surface. And then we're going to apply a full coat and brush it over the whole piece. Okay, and that should just about do it. Now don't touch it because the resin is still going to be a little sticky. If I tap, it is firm, but it has a little bit of like a filmy residue on it that requires a little more time in the UV lamp to remove. So don't be going and picking it up with your fingers if you've only put it in for a couple seconds. But then the next step is to just grab that resin again, and I'm going to just apply a small amount just across the surface, and I'm going to have to spread it out. And don't apply a lot because it's a weird shape that we've got here and it's easy for the resin to drip off. Apply a little bit in the parts where you've already placed resin. Okay. And if you wanted, you could apply the resin just as water droplets at this point. You don't have to apply resin across the whole surface, though the powder does need to be sealed in. So if you choose not to apply resin to the whole piece, you might need to work in a little bit of varnish. So I still think the best result would come from applying a good amount of resin to the surface, but you could work in varnish instead and just apply them as droplets. And then I'm using a ball tool to spread it out. You could use a brush as well. I always end up with brushes that have cured solid and I have trouble getting the resin out, so I prefer to just spread it using tools. But you're just going to spread that resin around until you have a complete coat across the whole surface. Then you're going to place it under the UV light for 15 minutes this time to cure it completely. And after that, we're good to assemble. And once that is cured, this is how it should look. And I'm quite happy with how that turned out. It really has a lovely glass-like finish to it. All of those pearls are secured. You can still feel the bumps from them, but they are completely embedded in that resin, and just the whole thing has a wonderful effect to it. Also, you should try looking at this in sunlight. It's a little hard to show on camera, but it's really nice in sunlight. Now, I've got a pin drill here, and I'm just going to drill a hole right at the top of this piece. And these are going to be a pair of earrings. They're going to be a fairly large pair of earrings because I wanted to show the kind of sari ribbon effect, and it's difficult to get that on smaller pieces. But the good thing about the effect is that all of these folds are hollow, so a lot of the time the pieces are actually lighter than they look. So that is something to bear in mind when doing this technique. The resin is going to add some extra weight, but if you really wanted it to be light, you could make the clay as thin as possible. The back also could be a bit thinner, and you could use a smaller piece, you just wouldn't capture as much of the ribbon effect. Or you could make pendants. Then I've got a jump ring, ear wire, and a smaller jump ring. And all you do is very nice and simple. Open up that jump ring, slip that through the hole. There we go. Close that up. Grab the smaller jump ring and open that up, and then you attach your ear wire, and that is pretty much it. Let me know what you thought in the comments below of this project. Have you tried this effect before, or is this the first time that you've seen it? What do you think of the general sea foam idea? I thought that it was quite a nice idea and is very effective with this kind of ribbon effect. But yeah, if you have questions, leave them in the comments below, and if you like the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing, as it helps the channel out and gets this out to more people that like polymer clay videos. Also, if you'd like to support the channel so I can continue creating videos just like this one, please do consider becoming a member. There is a join button just below this video. There also is a link to my Patreon account, which is another good way to support the channel. It's another membership. It's basically the same as YouTube, so either one of those is great. Another place to support the channel is my Etsy store, Jessima Design, where I sell things such as the cutters that are used in today's video. But yeah, that is just about it. I do hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.